Okay, today we are going to take a look at the user interface of Photoshop and get started on lesson one. Um, lesson one starts on page 8 of your book, and it's just going to have you use a few simple tools on top of an image in Photoshop. So what you needed to do first is open up Photoshop. You're looking at the Mac interface right now, and my Photoshop is nested in the dock down here. If you're working on a Windows, it might be somewhere else. You might have to go search for it over in your Finder or your little computer icon down here on a Windows display. But on the Mac, I'm just going to click on Photoshop to open it up. And as I do that, I want to hold down Command Option Shift to reset Photoshop to its default settings. If you're on a Windows, it's Control Alt Shift to reset to its default settings. But I'm going to hold down again Command Option Shift. After I click it, Command Option Shift to reset Photoshop to its default settings. The reason we do that is because you might change a bunch of things in Photoshop and it won't sync up with what the book tells you to do, or it might not look with how the book looks as you go through each lesson. So the reason I do that again is kind of just to reset the default settings. So now Photoshop's open up, and this is the interface. It's different again in Windows. In Mac, it has this floating window. In Windows, it might be docked. And in the location of this up here, the menu bar is a little different. But other than that, everything is pretty much the same. There's a few different ways to get shortcuts to do, and keystrokes to do shortcuts, but other than that, they're pretty much the same program. So as we look at this here, this up here is your menu bar, and this is where I can open new documents. I can also save from here, close, print, edit, and we'll begin to use all these drop-down menus throughout the semester. A big one to know about is Window, and windows pop up what's called panels, and that's probably a good idea to see those right now. So I'm going to pop up my history panel, and it's over here, and these are called panels, all these things over here. And as I start to make changes to my document, to my composition, it'll begin to tell me my history, and I can go back in my history and change things. If I don't want to see a panel, I can click on these arrows here, and it will dock it in one of the docks, and it docked it in this right here. And I can just pop it out again by clicking on that there. Again, put it back. And I can also move these around, so I can bring them in and move them out. If I want to put them back, I just hold them to the side. And I got to get that blue line. You see how the blue line pops up? There we go. It puts it back, docks the panel back on the side. So other things of note are the tool panel, which is over here. Again, the tool panel I can pull out and move around, so I don't need to have it docked over here. If I don't want, I can move it around and have it anywhere on my layout or on my screen that I want. Whatever's useful for you or easy for you, go ahead and do that. But right now, I'm going to leave it docked in there. Let me just get it. Boom, right there. There it goes. And this is called our tool panel. We'll be using this extensively throughout the semester. So it's a good idea to kind of get to know it really well. From here to here, the first line, these are sort of your selection tools and your cropping tools. And then you have your these tools alter pixels, so they kind of blur or change pixels. And then these are your type tools down here and your pen tool. Below that, you have your move tool and your zoom tool. And we'll get to know all these tools really well again. But another thing to note is each tool has tools underneath it. If there's a little arrow down here in the corner of that tool, that means there's a tool underneath it. So this tool is the move tool and the artboard tool. The one below that, we have the rectangular marquee tool, the elliptical marquee tool, the single row marquee tool, etc. So each one of these little arrows, underneath that arrow, if you click and hold, you'll see the other tools. If I just click on this tool here, I get the first tool in the list. If I want to select a different one, I click and hold and go over and select that one. And now I have the magic wand tool. So like this is the crop tool below the magic wand tool. I can click that, and now I have the crop tool selected. But if I want a different tool, I click and hold and I go select maybe the slice tool. So this is your tool panel. It's going to be really helpful throughout the semester. You're going to want to know it really well, and again, we'll be using it extensively. Other things to note, we talked about the panels, the tools panel. This is the option bar. So for each tool, there's a different set of options. So as I go through and click on the tools, you see how the option bar changes. And these are different options. So this up here is called your options bar. And it's good to know that each tool has a different set of options, and you can change those and sort of play around with those and see what works for you, or what you're trying to do. And the book will tell you how to set up your options as you start to use different tools throughout the semester. So moving on, I'm going to open up lesson 1 and take a look at what we will be trying to do. So I've already downloaded from the back of the book. If you look at the back of your book, you'll see an insert with a little tearaway on top. So if you tear that away, that gives you a code, and then you go to this website called Peach Pit, and you can download all the lesson files to your hard drive or to your flash drive or to the Google Drive, however you want to store them. And that way you can always use those files throughout the semester. You're going to need to have those. If for whatever reason, maybe you bought a used book, you don't have those files, let me know, and I will give you all the files. But I've actually posted all the files on our Google Classroom. So each lesson has the start file. I didn't include the end files. So if you want the end files, let me know. I can get you the end files, but I want you just to kind of go with the start file. So you can either, one of two things, download your own lessons with that insert in the back of the book, or you can just wait for the lesson to appear in the Google Classroom, and that way you'll have a week to get them done. And you can just download the lesson file straight from Google Classroom. So what I've already done is I have lesson 1 over here, and it's on my desktop. There's a few ways to open a file in Photoshop. So one of the easiest ways is just go to File, Open, and this brings up what's called the Finder on a Mac. And oddly enough, it's on desktop already, so I just click on Lesson 1 and go to End. I'm going to open the End file. I'm actually going to open up both files. To do that, I click on the top one, hold down Shift, click on the bottom one, and this will actually open up both files. So I'm going to open the end file and the start file in Photoshop. Now it's taking a while, and I'm not sure why. These aren't big files, but here they go. So that's the start file. So as we look up here, there's two tabs, and this is the end and this is the start. So you can click between each one. As you see, it says o1.psd, o1start.psd. This is the start. o1end.psd. That is the end file. So I'm going to click on the end file and take a look at that. And this is what it's going to look like as after we do lesson 1. It looks like this. So we're going to transform this into something like this, okay, through Photoshop. So I'm just going to close the end file because we actually don't need that. We just need the start file. So we're going to start to use some tools with this file to create some effects. And one of the first effects we're going to create is, let's see here, we're going to zoom in to look at certain areas. We're going to kind of get to know the zoom tool. So the zoom tool is over here on the left hand side on your toolbar, and if I go down here and click on that, I have my zoom tool. Or if you want, and you get to know the letters for the shortcuts, if you just hit Z, the letter Z on your keyboard, it will pop up the zoom tool. If I roll over any tool and let my cursor stay there long enough, it tells me this is the path selection tool, and that if I hit the letter A, it will use that. So let's try A. Oh, there we go. So I didn't even need to be on that. I can just hit the shortcut Z for zoom tool, A for the path selection tool, T for the type tool, etc. So I'm going to click on Z and zoom in. I'm going to zoom in. Now, if I have scrubby zoom selected up here, which I do, I can just click and drag, and if I drag to the right, I zoom in. If I drag to the left, I zoom out. So click and drag, and I can zoom in to certain features of my composition of the picture of this flower. So that's pretty great. This is a zoom tool, and you get to know that throughout the semester. Now, say I'm zoomed really far in, but I want to move around my my image. What I can do is hit spacebar, and this little hand pops up. And this is the move tool, so I can use this to move around. It's kind of like a grab. My hand is grabbing the composition and moving it around. I let go of spacebar, and I'm back to my zoom tool. Okay, so that's just another shortcut to know about. Another thing to know about is the navigation panel, and if I go up here to my window and I go down to Navigator, this little navigation panel pops up. And if I'm really far zoomed in to this, I'm working on like editing these pixels here or the edge here, changing the color, and I want to go up to this flower or the flower that's above this, I can go to my navigation panel and just move this box around, and it'll go to exactly wherever I place that. So I can actually make this, the window of the panel bigger or smaller, and it controls the amount of zoom. So I can move myself around my composition this way. And that's the navigator. So again, I don't necessarily need that right now, but that's something to know about, and it's located under the window drop-down menu in my menu bar. So what I want to do now is control the brightness of this image. It's a little dark overall. If I zoom back out, it's a little dark. A few things to note. There's other ways to control my zoom. So if I'm really far zoomed in, if I look up in my options bar, I have 100%, I have fit screen, I have fill screen. Let's try 100%. So that's how big the image is. I can go to fit screen, and it kind of fits the screen. I go to fill screen, and it fills the screen. So these are three different sort of zoom options. So if I'm really far zoomed in, I just go to fit screen, I'm back to that, or just 100% if it's smaller than my screen. I'm going to go to fit screen. I like that view there. So now we want to change the brightness of this image. And to do that in Photoshop, if you've used Photoshop before, you might know about what's called layers. Well, layers are located over on the right-hand side under this panel here. These are layers. And layers I like to think about as pieces of paper that you can stack atop one another. And you can move around and shuffle the papers as many times as you want, and you can add as many papers as you want, and you can take away papers anytime you want. What layers are changes to the image that make it non-destructive. So I can change the image a bunch if I'm doing it on a layer, and I actually don't destroy the original image. So as you see here, there's already this ribbon on here. It says happy birthday on it, and it's a layer itself. So it's not actually altering the original image. It's a layer, like a piece of paper on top of the original image, but it's all one image. So I print this out with this layer turned on, it's going to look just like this. If I turn this layer off and press print, it's going to look just like this. So it's a way of not destroying your image as you're working. I can do a bunch of things to it. If I wanted to add a new layer, I wanted to go get my paintbrush tool. Let's see where that's right here. I wanted to draw my top of my image. Great. Well, now I could be destroying it right now, but it's in a layer, right? So I can just turn that off, and it goes away. Turn it back on, and there it is. There was a little bit of lag there. I'm not sure what happened, but there we go. Turned on, turned off. So I want to get rid of this layer. I don't want this scribbly black line I made on top of my image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. So as long as my layer is selected, I can do many things to that layer. I can duplicate it, I can alter it, I can delete it, I can do a bunch of effects to it, but I want to get rid of it, so I'm just going to delete it right now. And it's going to say delete the layer number 1. I'm going to say yes, I don't want that anymore. So now that's how layers sort of work. Another cool thing about layers is you can change the order in which they are. So again, like pieces of paper, you can take one piece of paper out and put it on top of another piece of paper. You can change the order in which the layers operate. So going back to the original idea of drawing, so I'm going to draw, I'm going to move this layer 1 on top of my happy birthday, and I'm going to draw right here, and it's going to go all over that like that, right? So again, I've ruined my image, but I'm just showing you how layers work. So what I can do is now I can take this layer in my layer 1, this paint layer, and drag it below my ribbons layer, and all of a sudden my scribbly line is below the ribbon. And this is really fantastic because it helps me to start to build up a composition. And again, I don't want this scribbly line, so I'm going to turn it off and or just delete it. So that layer is gone. So I'm going to turn off my ribbons layer. I don't want to see that anymore. But this is your layers panel, and you're going to get to know this really well again throughout the semester. This is how we work in Photoshop. And this is the beauty of Photoshop. It's you can edit images non-destructively, and you can make changes to images non-destructively. And you can go back, and you can save these layers, and open it later, and work on it more. And this is sort of a great introduction into all the Adobe Suite programs. So what I want to do now is go and add a brightness, I'm going to add some brightness. This is a little dark overall. So if I go up here above my layer panel, it has a libraries tab, which I don't really need. And also next to that tab is an adjustments tab and a styles tab. If I go to my adjustments tab, I can go to brightness contrast, click on that, and you see how it adds a brightness contrast layer right here? This is just a shortcut. These are all like shortcut ways to get to adjustment layers. So I have a brightness layer here now, and I can change the brightness of the image. Another way to access these adjustments are down here, clicking on this little circle that's half filled in. These are all, again, pretty much the same options here as they are up here. And you'll start to notice this in Photoshop. There's always more than one way to get to what you want to do. Like this adjustment panel is also located, all the options are located under this drop-down menu. So I tend to use this because I'm used to clicking on it and using these. But again, you can, if you get used to the symbols, you can just use the symbols here. But brightness contrast in the book tells us we want it to really up the brightness, and it tells us to go to 98. And let's move the slider over to 98. Boop. And look at that. That is much brighter. Oh, it went to 100. That's okay. 98. There it is. Much brighter. Amazing. And it tells us to bring the contrast slider up to 18. And I'm going to do that up to 18. And that's also looks a lot better than before, right? So we've added some contrast, which is separation between light and dark tones. We've added some brightness to the overall image. And it looks like a much more robust picture that I want to look at longer. Instead of this kind of dark and dreary picture. So I've gotten you started on this lesson. I've shown you where the some of these tools over here are located. We've talked a little about layers and adjustments. The rest of this lesson is really straightforward and simple. And I'm going to have you go ahead and just work your way through the book and complete this lesson. And at the end of the lesson, I want you to save your file with your name as a JPEG. And I'm going to actually walk through that right now. So what I want to do, I'm going to get rid of this there. I just clicked on the arrow there to get rid of that panel. So I'm going to walk you through the process of saving your image. But like I said, we left off on page 17, and it goes all the way to page about 29. So about 12 more pages and a few more changes you're going to apply to this image before I want you to save it. So this is the first lesson. So to do that, I'm going to go to save this, and this is how you're going to turn it in. I want you to go to File, Save As. It brings up an option here. I can save this as whatever I want. Now, this is how I want you guys to name things throughout the semester. And I'll mention this again, but the way I like to have a naming convention is because it's easier for me to read and understand, and it's easier to sort by file name and find things quicker. And this is how I name all my files. But I'm going to name this Rainer, my last name, underscore, which is shift. Underscore is located up on the top, your number row. So Rainer underscore lesson 1 final. Okay, Rainer underscore lesson 1 final. And that's what I want you to save it as. So I can save it as a PSD, and a PSD.psd is a Photoshop file. Now, .psd is going to save all your information, okay? It's going to save your layers. It's going to save the highest quality of your image. It's a non-destructive file type, so you can open and close it as many times as you like, and you're always going to have your layers over here, and you're going to have the changes you made, okay? And it's the file you want to print from. But what I want you guys to turn in is the JPEG file. So to do that, you go down to Format down here. I'm actually going to make this window smaller so it's easier to see. Format, and I'm going to go find my JPEG. A JPEG is a smaller file format. It's pretty much, JPEG is only for the internet or web viewing or computer screen viewing. You lose a lot of information with a JPEG. You can't save layers with a JPEG. There's a lot of things that aren't great about JPEGs, but the things that are nice about it are that they're small files and that they're easily transferred on the web, and they're easily viewed on the web. So what I want you to do is, once you get done with your lesson, I want you to say file, save as JPEG. So Rainer lesson 1 final .jpeg, and boom, there we go, JPEG. And as you see, all these options go away, and it's saving it as a copy. So it's not saving over this, what we did here. It was saving it as a copy, and I'll hit save, and it'll tell me, ask me, well, how do I want to save this? What options? For now, guys, you can just do quality 8 is fine. As I drag the quality up, you can see the file size increases dramatically. If I go down to like low, this is 97 kilobytes. It's a really small file. Go up higher, it's 847, so it's almost 1 meg. So I'm going to go down to 8, and that's fine, and hit OK. And now this file is saved wherever I decided to save it, which I don't remember where it was. So let's figure out where I put it. So what I'm going to do is hit File, Save As, and see where I landed this. I landed this file inside my lesson folder. It's a good idea when you do save things to know where you're putting it. I kind of goofed up there. I should have known where that was going. But you can add it to wherever you want. So you can have on your desktop or in your Documents folder or your Pictures folder. You could have you can make a new folder that says completed lessons. Right? I'm going to do underscore there. Completed lessons. I'm going to create that folder, and then I'm going to do the same thing before. I'm going to save it as JPEG. I'm going to call it Rainer underscore lesson 1 final, and save it there. And now I know where to find this file when I need to go find it again. It's in my documents. So pretty much that's it for that. If you wanted to save this and say you have to go walk away and you're in the middle of a lesson at any time, you need to save it as a PSD with all your file layers intact. So to do that, go to File, Save As, and then I'll say Rainer lesson 1 final, which actually isn't completed, so you could say in process or something, but Rainer lesson 1, as long as you know how to find it again. Final, I know this is not done yet, but I'm going to come back and open it again. I'm going to save it in the lesson 1 folder. And right now it's saved as 01 start.psd. So if I save it as this, it's going to overwrite 01 start. Or if I want to save it as a copy, so now I'll have 01 start preserved, and then I'll have this new file preserved. And I'll save it in the lesson 1 folder, and I'll hit save. So now maximize compatibility, yes. Don't show me again. This is great. I want this to be maximized. Hit OK. And I'm going to close it out. I'm just going to say, do you want to save the changes you made before closing this? Well, it's up to you if you want to save it, but this is the one we originally opened. We already saved a copy of what we've done thus far, so I'm going to hit Don't Save. And then I'll go back to my lesson 1 folder, and this is the final PSD, the one that I just closed. I can open that up, And there I have it again. I have my layers preserved in here. So what you need to do is say happy birthday and then put your name down here um, for lesson 1. So happy birthday, and then follow the rest along with the rest of the lesson. They'll have you make a new ribbon and then put your own name in that ribbon, okay? So I'm going to click this off. I'm going to close this out. And that's going to be lesson 1. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to email me or contact me through my cell phone or text. But welcome to this book. It's pretty straightforward. People don't really generally get too lost. Usually there are some questions, so I anticipate questions, and we'll work it out. We'll figure out how to make it work, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and I'll see you guys in a little bit, and go ahead and complete that lesson and turn it in to Google Classroom. Thanks.